If you've been around church at all, you've likely learned or at least heard the prayer that Jesus taught his disciples how to pray. Or maybe if you're old like me, you heard it every day at school. But what are the first two words of that famous prayer, right? They're Our Father. And so throughout the Bible, we see God personify himself as Father. And one of the cool things about that, for those of us who are fathers, is that we see throughout the Bible kind of the perfect example of what it looks like for us to be a father. We see the way that the Father loves and leads the Son. Psalm 103, verse 13 says that God is compassionate like a father. 1 John 3:1 talks about how God is a father who shows great love. And there are many other examples like how God disciplines and is patient, along with many others. And so all of those things help us as fathers to know, what does it look like? How should I act to be a good father? And we follow God's example. That's very challenging because I know for myself, I often fall short of that perfect example. But it's also kind of encouraging and pretty cool that I, in my role as a father, get to show and demonstrate to my kids what God is like. And so my role as a father, the way I love and care for them, shows them a little picture of who God is and how he is a father to them. But today's not Father's Day. Today's Mother's Day. And so kind of throughout the Bible, we never see God called Mother God, and God never identifies himself as our mother, and so I would never choose to address him in that way. But that doesn't mean that motherhood isn't from God or that it doesn't reflect his character, because both men and women are made in God's image, and we're created in God's image, and so we both reflect God's character and who we are. And so today we're gonna take a little bit time and we're gonna look at a few different passages in the Bible where God uses kind of motherly qualities to describe himself. One thing that I thought was kind of interesting, this is kind of just an aside, is that in the Bible there's actually no specific instructions to mothers. There's specific instructions to fathers, but no direct specific instructions to mothers. So that's kind of, we're going to look at different times God describes himself using motherly qualities, and hopefully you're encouraged and we can understand a little bit more of who God is. And so we're going to be bouncing around a little bit in the Bible. And so we're going to start off by looking at Deuteronomy 32, verse 18. And I'll be flipping there as well, so you don't have to worry about being left in the dust. So Deuteronomy 32, verse 18, and then we're going to be flipping to Isaiah right away. Deuteronomy 32:18 says, I'm in Genesis. See, I told you you wouldn't be left in the dust. Deuteronomy 32, verse 18 says, "You were unmindful of the rock that bore you, and you forgot the God who gave you birth." And we're going to turn to Isaiah 42, verse 14 now. That reads, "For a long time I have held my peace, and I have kept still and restrained myself. Now I will cry out like a woman in labor. I will gasp and pant." So I have the blessing of having 3 wonderful children, likely one of which was the one who knocked my mic down my shirt. But yeah, I was able to be at all 3 of their births. And now as a man, I can't say that giving birth is something that I ever wanted to experience. Birth can be really long and looks horribly painful. And it's not like birth just kind of happens out of nowhere, right? You get to look forward to it coming for 9 whole months. And it's not just 9 months of waiting. You have to endure 9 months of feeling sick and uncomfortable as you wait for the day to come. And I just imagine, like, if all that was explained about that process was you're going to puke a lot, foods that you love you're gonna start to hate all of a sudden. You're not gonna be comfortable sleeping, and you're gonna need to pee all the time. And then you're gonna experience the most pain you ever had. I don't think there would be anyone signing up for that job. But what's the reason that mothers are willing to go through all of that? And the only reason is because their kids are worth it. Every single one of us is here today because our mother thought that we were worth going through all that pain. Or at least when they wanted to go back on that decision, it was too late. Yeah, we're all here because our mothers thought that we were worth it. And the crazy thing is our mothers had never met us before, right? Like, they had no idea who we would be. They had no idea what we would become, what our personality would be like, and yet they loved us anyway and endured great pain to bring us life. They loved us so much even before we did a single thing for them. And that attitude is reflected so much by God. I love the fact that God uses the phrase, I gave birth to you, to describe Israel as a nation, because it creates so much more intimacy than I created you. Like, I created you can sound very distant, but in that first verse we see I was the one who gave you birth. You are my children. It's not something that's just that relationship can't break. I love you. And in the second verse that we read, the context there is much more like God telling his people that, hey, it may look like I've been silent for a while, but the time is coming where I will start to act. And it's great because it also conveys that waiting for that time has been hard for God. It hasn't been easier. It hasn't been comfortable. And despite what it may seem, it may seem like God is not doing anything, but he has been present the entire time. And this also made me kind of just think of human history in general, right? God brought forth all the life that we see on this earth. God created the world. He created the good, all the good that's in it, and yet we rebelled against God. We committed all sorts of sins. And yet, why was God willing to endure all of that? It was only because he loved us. And he knew that one day we would be born again through him and that we would be made perfect. And for all of human history, until Jesus, it may have looked like, God, what are you doing? Like, why are you going through all this pain for all this horrible people? And then Jesus came and brought new life. And the answer why? Because he loves us. There will be a day when God will rule and we will get to worship and enjoy him forever. And so just like labor is painful, so the constant wandering and rebellion of people has been painful for God, but he kept going because he loved us and he believed we were worth it. And the crazy thing is that God knew, right? Our mothers didn't know all the good or the bad that we would do, but God knew exactly what we would do, what we would become, and he knew all the wrong that we would do, and yet he still chose to love us and create us and to die for us. Just like all of our mothers would say that we were worth the pain that they went through, I believe that God looks at every one of us and says, you were worth it. You were worth all the pain that I endured on your behalf. Now let's turn to Isaiah 49, and we're going to read verses 14 and 15. Isaiah 49, 14 and 15. But Zion said, the Lord has forsaken me. My Lord has forgotten me. Can a woman forget her nursing child, that she should have no compassion on the son of her womb? Even these may forget, yet I will not forget you. So even before a baby is born, there is an amazing bond that is formed between a baby and its mother. Babies can hear and recognize the voice of their mother in the womb. They'll even try to move around so that they can better hear their mother. I also read a study about how mothers' brains change when they have kids so that they respond quicker. Their brains change so that they can better hear and respond to the cries of their kids. A study found that there's basically women from everywhere in the world. They found that a mother would attend to her baby's needs within 5 seconds of him saying something. Within 5 seconds. I wish all of my problems were attended to within 5 seconds of them happening. I would be pretty great. And so here, God is calling attention to the amazing connection that exists between a baby and its mother. And now, despite that, there may be some mothers that will abandon their baby. But God said, "Not with me. I will never abandon you. I will never leave you." Meaning the love and affection and compassion that God has for his people is even greater than that of a mother has for its baby. That's pretty amazing. Like mothers, you all know the immense love that you had for your baby when you first got to hold it. And God feels the same for you. And we may have seen a mother carrying her baby and the smile and love that they feel towards, that you can see is happening. Like that's the same love and joy that God has when he looks at us. Whenever we are hurt or sad or cry out to God, he is there. And it doesn't take 5 seconds for God. Even though that's pretty fast. But God is there instantly. He's always, he doesn't actually need to come because he's always there. He's attentive to every single need that you have. I'll read a second verse similar. Isaiah 66, verse 13. It reads, "As one whom his mother comforts, so I will comfort you. You shall be comforted in Jerusalem." When people are scared or in trouble or hurt, who do they stereotypically call out for? Right. I want my mommy. This is what most people will call out for. I don't know if I've ever heard someone say exactly that, but most people, their mothers are an image of comfort for them. It doesn't matter if there's some big, strong, tough guy or a strong, independent woman. Most people, when they need comfort, will go to their mom. Moms are great at caring for and comforting their children. And here in this verse, that's exactly what God says that he will do for his people. So when we're hurt or upset and need a comfort, we can know that the God of the universe, his heart breaks for you and is there to comfort you. So when we face tough times, we don't need to hesitate to pour out our heart to God because we can know for sure that he's there and he cares deeply and is there to comfort us. The comfort that mothers bring is a reflection of who God is. Now we'll turn to Hosea chapter 13. So Hosea 13, verse 8. It says, "I will fall upon them like a bear robbed of her cubs. I will tear open their breasts, and there I will devour them like a lion, as a wild beast would rip them open." So it's pretty well known that if you're walking out in the woods and you see a little baby bear, you should run the opposite way. Because if Mama Bear sees you even thinking of going close to her cubs, it will not go well for you at all. Oftentimes, fathers are kind of seen as the protectors of the family, but it's often mothers who are a little extra protective of their kids. And when I read that, I thought of this picture that Trina will put up on the screen right away. It's a father throwing, and father sees, "Oh, I don't throw my kid that often," and mom sees dad chucking their kid to the moon. Yeah. Moms are usually a little more wary of danger coming in contact with their kids. And moms, that's right and good, because if dads were in charge, their kids would probably get hurt far more often. But yeah, moms, it's good that you care for your kids and that you're angry when harm comes to them. God has given mothers a little extra protective care for the good of their children. And so in this passage, God's children, they used to love and follow him, but they've kind of been stolen away and have now become children of idols, or children of Baal. And so in that passage that we read, it's kind of like this nation has stolen away God's children from him. God's children have been taken away, they've been led astray. And so God is rightly about to release his anger and dole out punishment because they mess with his children. So moms, it's good for you to be protective over your children. Your love for your kids is not just mushy-gushy, meaningless, right? It's an intense love that you don't want any harm to come to them. And that protective, don't mess with my kids kind of attitude is also mirrored by God. God's love for us isn't just out there lovey-dovey, feel good. Like he wants what's best for us, and it upsets him when harm comes. And we also, though, have the comfort of knowing that God will punish every wrong that comes our way, right? Whether that's on this earth, through Jesus' death, or in hell. Nothing that happens to us is missed or will go unpunished. God's love for us is fierce and protective, just like a mother's. Then we'll read Psalm 91, verse 4, and then we'll flip over to Matthew. So Psalm 91, verse 4 says, "He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a buckler." And then let's turn over to Matthew 23, verse 37. Matthew 23, 37 says this, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing." So both of these verses kind of have similar imagery, but we're going to focus more on the Matthew passage. So here Jesus is in Jerusalem and he's lamenting the city. So Jerusalem was usually the place where the kings would live, and so that's why the prophets would often go to Jerusalem, because they were going to talk to the king, the guys who's in charge. And so what do the Jews have a history of doing? Killing them. They often killed prophets, and these are the very people who were there to tell them what God said. And so one of the more well-known examples of this in the Bible was during the time of Ahab and Jezebel, right? Prophets were being killed quite often, so often that Elijah thought that he was the only prophet who was left in the whole land. And so he ran away and hid. Another example is Jeremiah. Jeremiah wasn't killed because he was a prophet, but he was actively ignored and harmed by the king. On one occasion, he came to the king and said, "Here, this is what God says." And as he was reading it, the king would chop off some of the letter and chuck it in the fire. "I don't care." And then later on, he was thrown into an empty well that just had muck at the bottom because you said we were going to lose, so here's your punishment. And they did lose. And there are likely tons of other prophets who we never got to hear about because they were killed right away. Because the people ignored what they had to say and decided, I would rather kill you than listen to what God is supposedly saying to me. And when these Israelites are rejecting or killing these prophets, they're not just rejecting the men, they're also rejecting God and his authority. And despite the fact that these people are directly rebelling against God, this is what Jesus says about God's heart. Despite the fact that they're directly rebelling, He says, "How often would I have gathered your children together as hens gather her brood under her wings, and you were not willing." Despite the constant and deliberate rejection and rebellion, God often wanted to gather his people like a mother hen. He wanted to unite them, to protect them from the world around them. He wanted to comfort them, to make them feel safe, and yet they would not go to him. They refused to let God care for them. Mothers, God has given you an incredibly kind and forgiving hearts. Even when your kids often are not kind to you, your love remains constant. I know a few men whose life has not gone in a good direction, and sometimes their fathers will have written them off, but their mom is always there at the drop of a hat, willing and ready to show them love. And now there can be a point where that might become enabling, but God here isn't enabling Israel's bad behavior, but he simply expresses how much he wants to show them the love and care that he has for them. He wants to protect them as a people despite the rejection. And there may be some mothers out there who have strained relationships with their children or with a child, and you desperately want to show care for them, and they won't let you. And God knows exactly what that feels like all too well. He knows the pain of wanting to desperately love and care for his child, and they won't let him. And in reality, though, that's kind of what we've all done to God to some extent, right? We've all rejected at times God's loving advances. And sometimes it's because we have the delusion that God just wants to stop my fun. Or just like if your mother came and you're like, just leave me alone. I just want to do what I want to do. Sometimes we have that same attitude towards God. Like, God, I just want to do what I want to do. Leave me alone. I'm okay. I got it. And yeah, in reality, that's the furthest thing from what we need. We all know that God is loving, but I think that we often forget what that loving heart kind of looks like. I know that I often think that God is constantly disappointed in me, or he's waiting for me to measure up to a certain standard, and it's easy to feel like I need to measure up to this much, and then God will be proud of me. But in reality, I think there's often a lot of times where we're kind of like a baby chick, just wandering around thinking that we got it all on our own, and when the reality of what we really need is to take shelter under God and to be comforted and protected by him. And the amazing thing is that it doesn't matter what we've done. Right? It doesn't matter what atrocities Israel did. Like, imagine if your mom sent you a letter and you killed the mailman over and over again. It doesn't matter what you've done. God is there to love and care for you if you just turn to him and ask for forgiveness. No matter who you are or what you've done, God is there to extend loving kindness towards you. And maybe you feel like, I did one too many things, or there's nothing that I could do that could ever make up for this. Like, if you just turn to God and ask for forgiveness, he is there. And there may be some of you who don't have a great relationship with your mother, or that you've been hurt, or your mother has not been the greatest example for you. And that sucks. It's really too bad. But know that God is there, ready, like we looked at, to comfort and care for you. So Park Avenue, today, as you celebrate the incredible mothers that you have in your life, I pray that you will be reminded of how amazing our God is. The God who endured great pain to bring you life, the God who's compassionate and caring, the God who is fiercely loving and protective, and the God who, no matter what, loves you, no matter what you've done, and that if we only would turn to him, that he would extend loving, tender-hearted love towards us. Let's pray. God, I thank you so much for the mothers that you've put in our lives. Lord, I pray that we would show them the love that they deserve. I pray that we would communicate just how special and meaningful that they are. And Lord, we thank you for how you care for us as people. Thank you for your patience with us. And Lord, thank you for the ways that you show us your loving kindness. I pray that we would, rather than running off and doing our own thing, that we would take the time to rest under your care.